Professional cage fighting isn't all about the money, but trust us, it certainly helps with the bumps and bruises. And in 2021, these were the 10 fighters within the UFC who managed, in total, to take home the highest disclosed fight purses. Number 10. Valentina Shevchenko, $784,000. With Amanda Nunes no longer the reigning champion of the women's bantamweight division, it could well be said that Valentina Shevchenko's pound-for-pound #1 argument has never been stronger, and through 2021 she proved herself to be more than deserving of that title, going 2-0 with a pair of dominant wins over Jessica Andrade and Lauren Murphy. It's hard to know what it will take to dethrone the Bullet, as she continues to show clear improvements in every facet of her mixed martial arts skill set. Will 2022 bring about a return to 135 pounds and a higher payday to go with it? Who knows? But with each passing defense of her flyweight crown, it's becoming increasingly apparent that Valentina has all but cleared out the division. Sure, she didn't crack the $1 million mark in 2021, but make no mistake, Shevchenko is working up to a potentially huge blockbuster in 2022, if all goes to plan. Number 9. Stipe Miocic, $790,000. He might not have been able to do the double on Francis Ngannou, instead losing by way of brutal knockout in the UFC 260 main event, but the former heavyweight king and consensus greatest fighter the division has ever known certainly managed to make bank as he went to battle with the Predator. One fight saw Stipe take home just $800,000 in base pay, making him one of the highest single-fight earners in the company this year. And given just how risky and dangerous it is to be competing amongst the heavyweights, the fact that Miocic is being fairly compensated for his efforts is certainly encouraging to see. Whether he can find his way back into title contention in 2022 is anyone's guess, but with Ngannou already defending his title against the challenger Cyril Gane to start the year, the division's future looks a lot clearer. Will Stipe be part of that future? Well, he certainly has the skills and overall experience to do so, that's for sure. Number 8. Max Holloway, $961,000. No pay-per-view appearances for Max Holloway in 2021, as he instead found himself headlining two of the most memorable Fight Night 5-rounders of the year. The first being his masterclass victory over Calvin Kattar, a win that is already seen as one of the single most impressive performances in UFC history, as well as his instant classic battle with Yair Rodriguez, a bout that saw him pushed by El Pantera more than most would have predicted. Holloway still managed to come out of these battles with the momentum fully behind him, and with an eye on 2022, Blessed will likely find himself in the cage with Alexander Volkanovski once more, as they attempt to settle their differences once and for all. And when you think about just how nuanced and technical their first two clashes were, there's every reason to believe that their third matchup will be among the most high-level fights the UFC has ever known. Number 7. Amanda Nunes, $1 million. Coming in at 7th with just over $1 million in fight purse earnings is the newly dethroned bantamweight queen Amanda Nunes. Sure, 2021 ended on something of a sour note for her, after the massive underdog that was Juliana Pena managed to pull off an upset for the ages. But even if she's no longer the champion of one of the two divisions she rules, chances are that the Lioness will enter her eventual rematch with Pena as the betting favorite. And when that bout comes around, you can all but guarantee that it'll bring about some serious business. Nunes might have shown some holes in her overall game last time around. However, there's every chance she returns to the octagon with a fire in her eyes, which could well spell trouble for the newly crowned 135-pound champion. Number 6. Petr Yan, $1.04 million. He might not technically be in possession of the UFC bantamweight title at this time, but few, if any, would argue against Petr Yan's status as the single greatest 135-pound fighter on the planet. His opening clash of 2021 obviously ended with some major misfortune and controversy, as he kneed the down Aljamain Stewart in the face for the DQ loss. But virtually everyone who tuned in had Yan fairly comfortably winning the bout prior to his mistake. Sterling, of course, made the most of the moment and received his fair share of backlash in the aftermath. But all in all, once Yan returned and managed to defeat Corey Sandhagen, the Funkmaster's legitimacy as king over the bantamweights was brought under even more scrutiny. He might have just about broken the $1 million mark for his 2021 purses, but you do get the feeling that Petr Yan is about to explode in a real big way in 2022, if he can win his title, that is. Number 5. Israel Adesanya, $1.14 million. A mixed bag of success for the last stylebender Israel Adesanya in 2021, as his failed attempt to become a two-weight world champion saw him briefly stunted in his pursuit of greatness. Jan Blachowicz, on the night, was able to get the better of Adesanya, showing a surprising level of competency on the feet while using his physicality to overpower Izzy on the mat. It was by no means a devastating loss, though, and Adesanya was able to rebound in impressive fashion against the hard-nosed contender Marvin Vettori. As one of the biggest stars in the promotion, it makes sense that the stylebender would rank so high in terms of fight purses earned. But with 2022 holding a long-awaited showdown with the hugely improved Robert Whittaker, Adesanya's prospects certainly seem as strong as ever, as he looks to hold on to his status as one of the top pound-for-pound guys in the sport. Number 4. Charles Oliveira, $1.292 million. Through his hugely impressive victory over Dustin Poirier, the UFC lightweight champion Charles Oliveira has finally brought some degree of stability to the 155-pound weight class. Though he won his belt after a hugely memorable clash with Michael Chandler, the looming presence of Dustin Poirier was enough to make some fans think that perhaps the best lightweight on the planet had not truly been revealed. However, when the time came to settle their rivalry, Oliveira left many of us thoroughly surprised when he managed to break the will of the incredibly tough and durable Dustin Poirier on his way to a third-round submission finish. For years, Charles had dangled in and around the mid-levels of the featherweight and lightweight divisions, but now, with his place in the pound-for-pound top 5 set in stone, he also has finally managed to bring in the earnings to show for it. A great year for one of the sport's most surprising emerging stars. Number 3. KAMARU Usman, $2.43 million. The consensus greatest fighter in the sport today had one hell of a year, all things considered. With each passing victory, his haters, and even his fans to some extent, were forced to admit that they were totally wrong about who KAMARU Usman could be within the UFC's pound-for-pound rankings. 2 brutal finishes of Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal gave way to an excellent showing against perhaps his biggest rival, Colby Covington, at UFC 268. In the conversation of Fighter of the Year for 2021, Usman's name will be one that will likely rise to the top in many people's eyes. When you consider how many people had labeled the Nigerian Nightmare as something of a boring fighter in years gone by, this recent run of form has well and truly made the world accept the fact that they were very wrong. And judging by his near $2.5 million purse and strong pay-per-view showings this year, it's pretty clear that Usman is carving out a place among this era's defining MMA athletes. Number 2. Dustin Poirier, $2.85 million. 2021 was a year of 2 halves for the former UFC interim lightweight champion Dustin Poirier, who made himself seem set for Fighter of the Year status after going 2-0 over Conor McGregor at UFC 257 and UFC 264. Of course, his run of form would come to a disappointing end as he fell to the Brazilian jiu-jitsu prowess of the aforementioned Charles Oliveira. But even if his second shot at undisputed gold fell flat, it's hard to look at the Diamond's 2021 and focus too heavily on his failures. This was the year that DP truly broke out as a star, and though his official fight purse total came in at just under $3 million. When you factor in the 3 hugely successful pay-per-views that he headlined, Poirier likely made enough money this year to retire a very comfortable man. As one of the longest-serving elite fan favorites in the UFC right now, it's hard not to be happy for Dustin, even if he never quite manages to fulfill his dream of hoisting UFC gold onto his shoulder. Number 1. Conor McGregor, $8.04 million, $3.04 million for UFC 257, and $5 million for UFC 264. He might not have been able to capture victory inside the cage this year, but as you might expect, the earning prowess of Conor McGregor saw him come away with his pockets full to the brim. Before you even get into the tens of millions he took home in pay-per-view points alone, Conor's fixed salary from the UFC was already miles ahead of the competition. Through his 2 appearances inside the octagon, he managed to bring in over $8 million in base pay, a number that most fighters would be lucky to make in their entire career. And though the Irishman certainly finds himself in a tough spot within the lightweight division, if he can, in fact, heal up and find his way back into a good state of health, chances are that 2022 will spring up even more blockbuster main events for this former UFC featherweight and lightweight champion.